Hey, so the question is, how long do crypto dips last? Well, it really depends on the size of the dip, to be honest. So dips happen very quickly, and pumps also happen very quickly. And in general, people talk of dips happening a bit more quickly than pumps. Sometimes a pump can last several weeks. Very rarely it can be only a few days. Whereas when dips happen, they happen super quickly, at least early on. They can also happen in a matter of days. But when we're in a full bear market, which only happens at the moment every 4 years, there is a 4 year cycle, you'll see the first phase of that dip will be very quick. And there may even be a kind of a bull trap. The dip may stop. There may be a turnaround. People may think that we're resuming the bull market, but soon enough that also peters out, and there's another sudden dip. So there's a lot of, let's call it, violent dipping in the early phase of a bear market. But what happens, the later phase of a bear market is actually much longer, and it's a kind of very slow bleed, very slow. And I remember from the last cycle, and I think most bear markets are like this, that when you're going through this slow bleed, even then, even though it's slower, even then it's still hard to time the bottom. Why? Because you get all these things happening in the market that make you think, we must be turning around, we must have bottomed out. And it never quite does. It never quite does. And it only does when you're way past that. When you look back and it's actually been going up again, and you're like, oh, that was the actual dip. That was the end. That was the end of the bear market. And it's not really dipping anymore, and we're now in the recovery phase. So it's very, very difficult to know when how long dips last. I mean, equally, it's very difficult to know when something has stopped pumping. Whatever market you're in, and especially Bitcoin, which is almost like a leverage tech play, it's so volatile. It is so difficult to know when any trend has finished, or even when any new trend is being established. It's so difficult to know. You're constantly being tricked, and that's just the nature of the market, because there's so many speculators involved. And some people are going to have long-term commitment. They're going to have conviction, and conviction's a double-edged sword, right? Conviction is something to admire, but conviction's also something to say, well, someone's being belligerent and is not willing to admit when they need to change their mind. So you got all kinds of people in the market. You got some people showing commitment of good or bad type. You got other people who are more likely to just panic. A lot of people being emotional, even when they claim that they're being logical. And this results in all the crazy tricks that the market starts playing on you with all the price actions. This is why a lot of people now just go for the long term. They just say, I'm going to keep DCAing. I'm going to make regular buys, equal buys, and just wait for the long-term trend to emerge, which hopefully, when it comes to Bitcoin anyway, should be up. When it comes to altcoins, I don't know. And a lot more people are saying now that altcoins could just be oscillators, that they pump super early, and they might beat new all-time highs, but it won't be very often. And before you know it, they just oscillate up and down, up and down, up and down, and eventually stabilize. Because adoption happens very quick with altcoins. Whereas Bitcoin is different. Bitcoin is digital gold, and a lot of people still aren't sold on it yet as being gold, and the adoption curve is much, much longer and drawn out. And therefore, it will go up and up and up for a lot longer than altcoins, whereas altcoins kind of have a very quick adoption and then just oscillate. This is what I think. This is what more people are now starting to think. This is what wasn't really clear in the last cycle. I think a lot of people thought that there would be heavyweight altcoins that were going to mimic Bitcoin and have this long, multi-year, maybe even multi-decade rate of adoption and very good growth. I think a lot of people wanted to believe that altcoins behave like tech companies like Microsoft and IBM and Apple, and they were going to have this decades-long growth. I don't think that's happening with altcoins anymore. I don't think that's how they behave. I don't think even any altcoins you can reasonably see are still going to be in the top 5 10 years from now. I think Bitcoin will be. I think in 5 years from now a lot of the top 10 will have gone, but Bitcoin will still be there number 1. So yeah, how long do these dips last? That's always the question, and the way to avoid them is just to long-term hold. But I believe you can only really do that with Bitcoin. I think you're always going to have this problem with dips, with alts, and even with Bitcoin as well. And what do? You can take that strategy of long-term hold and ride out those dips, and don't, I mean, the problem with any crypto, if you're playing the stock market, you're playing this strategy, long-term hold, ride out those dips, then what you do is you try to manage risk. So you don't hold everything in Tesla or Nvidia. You try to have some stocks that are defensive, so that when you experience dips, you're going to have some preservation of your value. So you're talking about things like defense industry, healthcare, pretty stable industrials, stuff like that. But the problem now with, if you're just in crypto, there isn't really any major defensive play. There are some cryptos that are based on gold, for example. There's Tether Gold and Pax Gold. That's about the most defensive play you can have. I mean, the only other defensive play is really cash, right? You can hold stable coins. That is a defensive play, but it's no different to being out of crypto completely and just holding, real cash. So I don't really, I suppose you could say the same about Pax Gold and Tether Gold. You could just hold real gold. But the point is that you're not really in crypto at that point. Like, you are technically, but you could be out of it and buy the real thing. So there's no real way to manage your risk in crypto. You just got to kind of accept that you're going to have dips, and if you're DCAing in, then you'll also be DCAing even when there's dips. Now, one thing you can do that some people do is you can go in and lump sum heavy on the dips, right, to really take advantage of them. And there's a big debate about DCAing, which is a regular amount in every month, not changing it whether you're in bull or bear. The alternative is lump sum investing, and that is still making regular investments, but what you're doing is you're choosing to be a bit more strategic. You're choosing to go in with a lot more when you think it's a bargain price. And I suppose part of that, although some people would say you should do this with DCAing, is to take profits when you feel the opposite, when you feel your crypto is overvalued, when it's not worth, when you think that your DCAing is not really, you're not making as much out of it probably, then you can take profits, right? So there's a few pumps, you take some profits. When you take profits, you skim off the top. You don't take huge chunks, you just skim off the top. You're still really doing long-term holding. But yeah, some people like to buy these dips. You might hear that all the time. Buy the dip, slurp that dip. The problem is, if you buy a dip not far from an all-time high, then are you really getting that big a bargain? Difficult to say. You're definitely making more than you were yesterday, right? It's definitely going to be a better bargain. But if you're just in the beginning of a bear market, it might be better to wait till later. And the problem is, if you wait till too long, the bear market will reverse and you won't make as much. So, I mean, for me personally, I made a lot in the last. Well, I mean, I made good gains. I won't say I made a lot. I mean, I'm not a rich person, not by any means at all. I think most of the world is richer than me. I consider myself a poor person, but that's part of the reason that I'm in crypto. But in the last cycle, I definitely I did well by. I carried a lot down from the all-time high, which punished me, and then I started buying on the way down. And initially, when I was buying at like 50k, 45k, these were not bargains. Not at the time. They might look like bargains now, although we're not that far away. I speak at the time when we're at we just hit 78k yesterday. So 50, 78, it's not that different. But the more entrenched we got into the bear market, suddenly those buys look like big, look like bargains. Now, should I lump sum in? I think I might have spent some lump sum at the time. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly, but ideally you make lump sum purchases as you're really getting into the bear market and you've been there for a while. Anyway, it's not financial advice, but it's just something to think about. So let me know what you think, and yeah, I wish you well profiting from those dips eventually. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.